I think most of us on this in the audience today understand what the challenges are around SaaS management and incorporating that as part of your overall strategy. But if we look at the next slide here, part of our webinar sign-up form, there was an optional field that many of you filled out that essentially asked, what are some of your biggest pain points associated with SaaS in your various organizations? Listed here, we took those examples and put them on a single page here in terms of kind of the categories that we saw. I'm sure that these are very common and already known either by you or by your teams within your various organizations. But whether it be procurement management, vendor management, to IT leadership, product management, application owners, or the SAM managers themselves, or IT finance, it really does seem to be that these are the common observations that we see. If we look at number one, then, with the lack of visibility to data, man, that's a challenge, isn't it? We know that the trustworthy data is really key to any successful ITAM program, and that there are two major components to that trustworthiness. There's both the data completeness component as well as the data accuracy. So perhaps in many cases, it's, I kind of want to say air quotes here, it's easier, and I use those air quotes because it's often not the case, but let's imagine that in many cases, SaaS is easier to have the accurate data. There's still the issue of completeness and having all of it in your purview. Some of those questions, right? Do we know where the SaaS spend's coming from, where it's occurring? Do we have the proper people that have access to the reports, the portals, the outputs from data integrations, or the other administrative dashboards that exist that can in turn be used to assess complete data? Is our spend quantified, and is it known? At Anglepoint, and I probably said this before that many of you have probably heard, but we say that you really can't boil the ocean when it comes to managing your entire software estate within your organization, trying to do everything at once. So as such, performing a SaaS publisher prioritization exercise where we capture the spend and then normalize that to a specific SaaS provider or publisher will help immensely in understanding where your efforts should really focus and kind of taking that tiered approach, doing the biggest bang for your buck first. We're going to talk more about some of the tooling and solution considerations later, but it really is important that the data drive the solution, with the solution being more comprehensive and more holistic than just a single tool itself. And then for number two here with Shadow IT, we see that the proper detective controls can really help drive the uniformity of policy enforcement. Policies that put in place really do need to come from the top down with the proper executive level sponsorship. That's really key to ensuring that policies enacted can actually then be enforced. And when we look at number three, the aligned strategy component, this is really a tricky one, as we see, and I'm sure that many of you have experienced, the strategies for SaaS is that, if there's even a strategy at all, is oftentimes at a business unit level or a team setting level versus enterprise-wide. We see oftentimes that there are fewer enterprise licensing agreements for a given SaaS provider, as the volume that's maybe purchased doesn't justify it, or it just hasn't gone through the appropriate IT purchasing channels. Or it can be perhaps that SaaS can oftentimes be quickly implemented, as it's simple as really just setting up an account or logging into a website, versus our traditional software request and deployment process for IT software. So we really do believe at Anglepoint in setting up an appropriate ITAM steering committee that is made up of cross-functional senior level stakeholders across the business that can then approve the policy and approve the strategy that your organization takes. Now, we could talk for a whole webinar about that single topic, so we're not going to dive too deep into it, but we do want to call it out here that it's important in having that authority to enact real change, and then making sure that the various organizational silos that exist all can align. For number four, then, with the business case to drive management support, it's really important that incorporating SaaS management into your overall ITAM strategy be supported by your senior management. Now, we're going to talk today about some of those steps that can be taken to build the business case. But as mentioned earlier, that data-driven approach of looking at spend, looking at your risk, your usage, and more will allow for that executive level buy-in to occur, such that management does support the direction that you're trying to pursue. So with that in mind, then, I'm going to turn the time over to Chris, who's going to give us a deeper perspective of how we can overcome some of these challenges that you may be encountering.